Hello and welcome everyone to this short video on debugging. This is a video created more from a functional perspective. Although per se the functional people are not required to know debugging, but you would agree that it is always advantageous to have that knowledge. A short disclaimer is that this is something that is more relevant from an ECC and S4 HANA on-premise standpoint, because for ABAP on cloud and S4 on cloud, you have the ADT, the Eclipse, and the debugging perspective used. Although conceptually it remains somewhat the same. So what we will do here is we will learn about two concepts from a debugging standpoint. One is a breakpoint, one is a watch point. We will look at this in the system first, and then we can come back to the text in the presentation. So I have the system open with me. What we will do is first take a look at a breakpoint. So I've created a simple program for this. Let me run this program. So what this program primarily does is when I enter a plant, it gives me the details from the plant material table. So this is a test system. You will find that there are some limited number of records that this has. Let me go back. Let me enter some other plant that I wish to see this information for. Here you find when I try to put IN01, it says please enter appropriate plant, which ideally would mean that this plant is not available in the system. But if I want to check from a code perspective on where this message is being triggered, I can go inside the program. Of course, you can argue that you would need some knowledge and idea of how the coding works in the background, but that should be fine. With custom code, typically you will also have something we call as description, where you or comments, where typically people put comments as to what each section of the code really does. So here, in order to not drag this for too long, I'm just putting the breakpoint here. So here on the left, you have the option of putting a breakpoint on any statement or any valid statement. Okay, so you can't put a breakpoint on an empty line. So if you try to do that, you see that it doesn't get set there, it gets set on a line above. Right, so here I am putting the breakpoint at the select for the particular plant. Now let me run the program again. I enter the same plant, which you already know is incorrect. So when I now run the program, there is a break in the program or the flow because you have put a breakpoint in the system. And here you would see that this debugging opens a separate session, which you see right now, and it has stopped at the point where you put the breakpoint. And if I try to go ahead, I just did an F5 or a single step here, you will see that the size sub RC is 4, which tells you that the statement has failed, where it has tried to select a value from the plant master table, and this has failed. And whenever the statement fails, there is a message that is being triggered. So if I now run this completely or continue, you will see it says please enter appropriate plant, which means there is a failure here. Okay, so now you have understood what is a simple breakpoint. You can choose to test it in your own system. We will now take a look at what is a watch point quickly. So I go to this transaction VA03 and I'm trying to see this order. When I press an enter, I see there is a message that is popping up, which you can clearly see. which says no customer master record exists for sold to party 1. Now let's say if I want to know from where this message is triggered, what I do first of all is I double click on the message and it opens up this performance assistant where it is detailing what is the message class and what is the message number. Now the nomenclature is that the last three digits will always represent the number, while anything before that will be the message class. Now the message class can be a bigger, I wouldn't say text, but a bigger field than this. It can be VP, NV, or it can also be a 6, 7, 8 character value, etc. But the last three digits will always point to the message. Now let's say I want to get to the point where this message is being triggered from. So this is where you would use the concept called watch point. Now in order to use the watch point, you would have to get into the debugging session first. So I enter what we call as /h on the command space, and then the debugging you see gets switched on. And here now I again press enter and you see that the debugging session gets opened. And this is where you will be able to create a watch point. So watch point is something I can tell you from experience you will use much more as a functional person than a breakpoint, because for a breakpoint you would need to know what the background code is, which usually happens when your code is custom, like a custom report or maybe a custom form, or maybe a custom enhancement, etc. So here I can go to this menu within breakpoints, and here you see an option to create a watch point. Now one important factor here, or one important additional information that you may need to know and understand, is a system runtime structure called SYST. System runtime structure has all the system runtime details like the time zone, the psi/c value, and also message related information. So in fact the message related information are distributed in multiple fields, typically all starting from MSG. So psi/msg no is the message number. So let me put the watch point on the message number 199. If you remember, what we just discussed is VP is a message class. Message class can also be used. That field is MSG ID and message number is MSG NO. So let me just create this watch point. At the bottom you see that the watch point is created. Now because I don't know where the code is going to stop, I'll just continue, and if the watch point, if we ever get the psi message number as 199, the flow will automatically stop. Here you see this has stopped here, and I understand the code might not be that revealing or understandable for you, but some basics you might know that customer master is KNA1, right? And here it says message E. E is typically pointing to error, that is why you see a red message at the bottom, and it is pointing to KUNNR, which is the customer number where you saw the sold to party as 1. If I totally run this again, you will again see this message here. Now how does this watch point help you? A lot of times you will still need help from the ABAP person if there is some deeper analysis or a backtracing required. But at a lot of levels the error is triggered from custom logic. Okay, not all the time of course, but quite a number of times it is the custom logic that is in error, and if you're able to point to that specific code, half your battle is won. You just need to tell your ABAPer that it looks like there is some issue in this part of the code. Okay, now quickly going to the presentation. So we've already discussed what is basic debugging. Knowing basic debugging is usually not a mandate for a functional consultant, but it is one of the critical differentiators that can provide a competitive edge over peers. In order to perform debugging, it is important to know basic ABAP objects like function module, message class, select statements, etc. So, very basic knowledge would be helpful. Although debugging is traditionally thought of as a developer's forte, but even functional consultants should generally have basic debugging access. This is true in most projects, but rarely debugging authorization is only exclusively given to developers. So here we already saw how this debugging is set either to /h or when you use a breakpoint. So breakpoint is a and watchpoint difference. So breakpoint is a debugging function provided by SAP standard to stop the program flow, which we already saw in the custom program, at a specific predetermined line or statement within the standard or custom code. Obviously, when we say standard, you would need to know how the code really functions in the background to put the breakpoint. Otherwise, we are more going to use a watchpoint. So watchpoint is a debugging function provided by SAP standard to stop the program based on a condition. So another name for a watchpoint is a conditional breakpoint. So value that you give, like the message number, that is a condition. Condition is typically a variable value like specific date or user, etc. Debugging may not seem simple at first, but with practice, this can truly accentuate a consultant's ability to add value to your project, to your um, team, to yourself as well, because your understanding certainly increases when you're able to do certain level of debugging. Now there are also some common causes to the issues. I would like to discuss this in a separate video, because this video is already a little long. So thank you so much for being with me. Catch you soon.